All right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in knowledge that is beneficial. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach us that which will benefit us from the surah that we're doing today. I know in the email that I sent we were going to do Surat Teen, Duha, and Shirah, but today we're only going to do Teen. It was way over ambitious on my side. So we'll do those two inshallah next week. The surahs that we're working on right now, Surat Al-Alaq, Surat Al-Teen, and Duha, and Sharh, all have similar topics. So, and they're very beautiful. So I'm looking forward to us covering them. Take a minute, make dua and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach you that which you most need from this surah, bi'idhnillah. I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do the same thing for me, and that the knowledge is implemented in my life and in your lives, Ya Rabbil Alameen. All right, so hopefully you have your notes up. Let me share my screen. Surah Al-Teen is a Makki surah, and there is almost no difference of opinion about the fact that it is a Makki surah. It is a surah that basically, if you think about like the theme of it, is the wisdom behind the creation of human beings. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, created the human, the components in how He of the creation of the human, and what makes it so perfect. What is the wisdom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in us, or like the way He had created us, and how did He guide us to take care of it? Like, how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us guidance to take care of the way He created us, so that we could reach that potential that He designed for us, but also do it in a state of well-being in this dunya and in the akhirah. So that's the theme of this surah, and that's why I said it was very transformative for me. Like, what I learned from this surah is kind of the guidelines of taking care of yourself and taking care of your taking care of yourself, basically, okay? And essentially, when you take care of yourself, you're being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your ibadah is impacted, your family is impacted, your society is impacted. It's like just you and taking care of you, so much more is impacted. So that's inshallah what the theme of this surah is. And we're going to get into that. So let's go ahead and listen to it with my favorite Sheikh, Ajami. Sorry. And let's follow along with the English translation.
والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I don't know if it's where I started, but I hope you said Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts by swearing in the surah. And we said that whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by something, it shows, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directing our attention to something, like something big is going to come. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ, by the fig and the olive, وَطُورِ سِينِينَ, and the mount of Sinai, وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ, and this safe land, meaning Mecca. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, indeed, or we definitely for sure have created the human being in the best design, in the best way possible. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, and then from then we had taken him to the lowest of the low, except there's an exception here for those who have iman and they do righteous deed. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ, to them is a reward that will not end, that has no limits. There is like vast and abundant. فَمَا يُكَذِّبُكَ بَعْدُ بِالدِّينِ. So why are they still denying or making you, like, basically denying the truth or rejecting the truth, or rejecting the deen, the way this religion has been revealed? أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. Isn't Allah the wisest of those who have wisdom, right? The wisest of the wise. And in the creation of human beings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding us to see his wisdom, right? Al-Hakim. So we said this is a Makki surah. The theme of and objective of the surah is like to think and ponder about the guidance Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Allah created us, but He did not leave us like that. He gave us guidance, and this guidance came to us by way of messengers. The perfect creation of the human, and we're going to talk about the physical creation of the human, the intellectual, the spiritual, and I did not add it in here, but the emotional as well. And then the consequences of not taking care of or maintaining this creation with the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, are we listening? Are we paying attention to the guidance? What does it mean for me? What can I do? Am I paying attention and heeding the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the surah by saying, وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ. And teen is a fruit, zaytun is another fruit. وَطُورِ سِينِينَ is an actual location. It's the Mount Sinai where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala met with Musa alayhi salam. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. And this sacred or protected and safe city, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking or revealing these verses in Mecca. So when He says hada, here, this place, He's speaking to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, anytime Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by something, He has the right, obviously, to swear by anything, because this is His creation, where we only swear by Allah Himself. Allah swears by two fruits, a teen and a zaytun. And the scholars, they had a difference of opinion. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by the teen and the zaytun for just the teen and the zaytun, like just to draw our attention to the actual fruits, or do they represent and stand for something? Both opinions are there by our scholars of tafsir, and they're both valid. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about the teen, or the fig and the olive as just the fruits, then it basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing our attention to the quality or the importance and the benefits that you would find in those fruits. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have created them in such a way that by pondering over them and reflecting over them, we would appreciate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We would increase our knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, last night I was at an event by Pearls of Hope, One Ummah, One Body, and I ran into Muna Minkara. I don't know if you guys know like Dr. Muna Minkara, and we talked about what I was doing tomorrow, and I said we're doing, Tafseer Surat AlTeen, and she said to me, oh my God, let me tell you the coolest thing. And she's like a scientist, right? And she said the science has discovered basically that in fig and olives, when you put them together, in it there is, I guess it has the makeup of it or something in it has the potential or the ability to repair the DNA, right? And repair the DNA in such a way that it kind of, subhanallah, like now I'm getting goosebumps because I'm connecting it. I wasn't connecting it last night, goodness. She said it repairs the DNA and it acts as a anti-aging thing, okay? So it protects us from aging, right? Anti-aging. And I was going like, really, that's so interesting. But subhanallah, so basically anti-aging, making your life longer, okay? I'll tell you guys at the end. Make sure you remind me, why am I saying this, okay? What clicked for me, because I want to connect it at the end. When we cover the rest of the surah, we'll see like how it's related. But basically, that's what she was telling me. And she said that at Trader Joe's, if you go there are these crackers that are made with fig and olives. Interesting, right? And then when you Google, you'll find all these restaurants, Mediterranean restaurants, that are called the fig and the olive. So Interesting, subhanallah. But basically, if it is, some of our scholars also said, like I remember reading something that said that the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about the olive is that it is a fruit that resembles the fruits of the Jannah the most. Like, so it's one of the fruits in dunya that resemble the fruits of Jannah the most, where you eat all of it, you don't take any parts out. And it's got a lot of health benefits. Like, and I'm not going to go into that. We can all like Google it, research it, and see the benefits out there. Same thing with olives. Olives are, we know like the benefits of olive oil. We know how good it is for heart health and beauty, and you name it. You name it. Olive oil is like essential for everything, right? And so if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is intending to speak about the benefits in the fig and the olive, then we reflect on that and we ponder over that. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about what they represent, then teen, the fig, represents the location in which Nuh alayhi salam's boat landed when he was saved. Zaytun represents the land in which Isa alayhi salam was born and I guess was raised, and that's where his da'wah was at, Palestine. Teen is in Turkey area, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran tells us when the boat like landed, it landed on a mount called Al-Judi. That mount, Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, is in the Mediterranean area. It's specifically, like when you look it up, it's in Turkey. So it's representing Nuh alayhi salam. Zaytun is representing Isa alayhi salam, Masjid al-Aqsa. The Mount of Sinai is representing the place and the location where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salam. And Hada al-Balad al-Amin, Mecca, is representing the how Ibrahim alayhi salam made the safe, what do you call this safe sanctuary for the believers, like a place of the first place of worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was eventually calling to Islam in Mecca. So all those locations are also drawing our attention to the prophets and the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these specific prophets and messengers are... We'll talk about that when I'm done. Can we go somewhere fun? I love it. These 5 prophets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولِي الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ, that be patient, just like the messengers of the strong resolve had showed patience. Who are these messengers of strong resolve? Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. All the prophets of Allah and the messengers of Allah are loved and respected. They all showed great deal of patience. They all had an important message to convey. They all called to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their message was all the same. It differed in some ways in the details, but the overall message was, La ilaha illallah, none has the right to be worshipped except Allah. There is going to be the day of judgment. There is going to be accountability. Be good, listen to me, follow me, obey me, because I am the messenger coming to you from Allah. So all of them were calling to this, and all of them were bringing us the guidance of Allah that would be essentially best for humanity to follow. And whenever humanity strayed away from the path of Allah, Allah would send a messenger. And Allah tells us that He would never destroy a people unless that He had sent them prophets and messengers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us that to every single nation He has sent a prophet and a messenger. Do we know all the prophets and the messengers? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about a few of them in the Quran, maybe up to 25, but then there's hundreds, over 3. We've learned that in one place, over 300 prophets and messengers had been sent throughout humanity. Okay, so the ones we know of are very limited. So what you see is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends them is to guide humanity to the wisdom Allah created them for. So this is why it's so fascinating when you see that some cultures they have they have practices or beliefs that when we look at them, we're like, oh my God, this is found in our deen. And then that's when we say, like, alhamdulillah, Allah's guidance went to everybody. It's not that we are the only ones that have been given the guidance and we are hanging on to it. We're the only ones that can deliver it. Yes, like the message of Islam had come to perfect it, had brought people back to oneness, right? Because essentially what happened after these prophets and messengers die or they leave or they're gone and generations pass by, misguidance comes up again, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends prophets and messengers to bring people back, but does that mean that they have lost all of the wisdom? That's what that's like, you know, when we understand that Allah is wise and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides people, we are able to appreciate how some nations and societies and communities have wisdom that is connected to Islam as well. But we can't dismiss everything, basically. We can't dismiss everything. It might not be attributed properly, right? It might not be attributed properly, but then we appreciate the fact that, so the reason why I say this, the other day, subhanAllah, I read an article that was talking about, it was basically talking about the benefits of yoga, and it was comparing the movements in yoga and how, at least basic yoga, and how it relates to the movements we have in Islam. The article was written by somebody Muslim. So they took the positions and they showed you the different positions, right? So when you read something like that, people are like, you know, in the comments, people are angry, like, oh my God, how dare you compare Islam to this, and, you know, all this stuff. But as a Muslim, you just say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wise, and it could have been that humanity has been worshipping Allah way before, like, you know, the message of La ilaha illallah. Like Adam alayhi salam was worshipping Allah, his children were, his, you know, like his offsprings were, Ibrahim was, Nuh alayhi salam was. So Allah has always been telling these messengers to teach humanity what would benefit them. So if we have remnants of that, even if the message changed, it could be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not certain, obviously. We have no way of knowing absolutely with saying this is the absolute truth and this is who came up with it. But we say that Allah is wise and Allah wants humanity to be guided, and Allah does so by sending us messengers and prophets. And then I highlighted the word patience, because what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing our attention to is that these prophets and messengers were patient, right? They could not deliver the message without showing an extreme amount of patience, right? Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, he says to his people, يا قوم لم تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم. Oh my people, why are you hurting me? Why are you hurting me? Why are you hurting me when you know that I am the Prophet of Allah to you, or the Messenger of Allah to you? Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has endured so much. Allah tells them, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ إِنَّهُ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. We know that your heart becomes tight because of what they are saying about you. They're hurting you so much that, like, your heart is impacted by this. So let it go, you know? Ibrahim alayhi salam being burnt in the fire. Isa alayhi salam is being a plot is being made up for him to kill him, and Allah saves him. But imagine everything else that is said about him and his mother, who was, like, you know, a virgin. Imagine everything that Nuh alayhi salam, like over 950 years calling his people to La ilaha illallah, yet at the end only a very few amount of people follow him, and his own son is one of the people that are like destroyed. His own wife is in the people that are destroyed. And so you're like, you know, these prophets and messengers, they have endured every type of difficulty. So when Allah tells us about them, He's essentially telling us, do you have the patience? That can you find that patience in you? You know, like giving us them as examples for us to follow through. And in this ayah, Allah is directly saying it to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? He's telling Muhammad, be patient, just like those prophets showed patience, right? Another thing is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing here, you see He's swearing AlTeen, والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين. He swears by 4 different things, and then Allah makes His point, right? then Allah makes his point. So some of the wisdom that we get from that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Tafseer ibn Ashur, he talked about Allah is doing tashriq, like he's making you really, like he's setting up the state, like he's setting up anticipation for what's coming up next, showing you that what comes after Allah swears by 4 different things that are really important. What comes up is of extreme importance, and in the sciences of the Quran or tafsir, we call it jawab al-qasam, like the purpose of the swearing, the purpose of the oath that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken. What is that? What is it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ, indeed, for sure, we created mankind or human beings fi ahsani taqweem, in the best of design. Okay, Allah created a human being in the best of design. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, then we had returned them to the lowest of the low. What is the best design that Allah created human beings with? So some scholars talk about that Allah is speaking about our physical creation, the external creation, and how we are different than, say, the jinn, and how different we are from the animals, like in the fish and the plants. Like we have the ability to walk, we are standing straight, we eat with our hands, we are able to cook our food. Like, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us physical abilities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. We had honored the children of Adam, and we have carried them on the we carried them in the land and in the oceans, right? So how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Obviously, like Allah means He's taught human beings something. He has given them an intellect. He has given them physical ability that they are able to create things that will allow them to travel in this way. Okay, or use the earth in this way, use the ocean in this way. The ayah is longer, but basically, so the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us is that we are spiritual beings, we have a physical creation, we have an intellect, a brain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, and a heart and emotions that guide us, that lead us, that and all of these different components, I try to make this up to show that they're very interconnected. It's not like your spiritual life impacts your physical life, impacts your intellectual life, impacts your emotional life. Everything like of a human being is impacting one another. And in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this design of a human being is perfect. Right? And if you follow the guidance of Allah, you will maintain it. You will reap its potential, and you will be able to maintain it until you reach old age and you meet with Allah. And whatever your maintenance of it, it will reward you by giving you Jannah in the Akhirah. Okay? And it will reward you by also taking care of you in this dunya and giving you the goodness of this dunya. But if you don't do that, then you are going to be returned to the lowest of the low. What is the lowest of the low? Imam al-Qurtubi says that this is like misguidance. If someone doesn't have the proper guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then their spiritual life or their spirituality is misguided. The way they handle their physical being, their external body, is misguided. And that misguidance will lead to its demise, to it being being at the low of the low. Some scholars also say that, how we said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about the physical creation of the human being. There's another ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن like you're created weak and then you become stronger. Like you're a child, you're a baby, you have no strength. And then you become stronger. Then eventually you become weaker. With age, you get older and you become weaker. And then at some point, like there will come a time when you will know nothing after having had knowledge. Meaning, like when you reach old age, your body deteriorates, your intellect deteriorates, but that's why some of the scholars have a difference of opinion about this, because they say a person's body a person's body might not deteriorate. Spirituality does not deteriorate. Like all this, your intellect might not deteriorate. You might live until you're 105 and still be strong. So there's that difference of opinion, but the majority agree on the fact that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this surah. He is speaking about the fitrah, the natural way in which He had created us, and how maintaining the fitrah means if you have faith in Allah, you will maintain that fitrah in Allah, the fitrah that Allah had created you with. And if you don't do that, then you're gonna be in suffering. What that looks like, Allah Ta'ala A'lam. Allah left it open. He said you will be returned to the lowest of the low. What does that look like? It's open. Right? It's not specifically defined. Some scholars say it is hellfire. And all these opinions are valid, right? So I mentioned fitrah. What is fitrah, right? What is fitrah, and why, how is it being addressed here? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fitrah is the innate nature in which He had created all human beings. Allah tells us in the Quran that when He created Adam alayhi salam, He brought from his backs and He basically made all of humanity from Adam alayhi salam until the last human being in this earth to stand in front of Him. And He said to them, "Am I not your Rabb?" And we all responded, "Yes, you are our Rabb." And that's the covenant we made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the remnants of it, the remnants of that conversation is called the fitrah. And the fitrah is how people know what is right and what is wrong. All of humanity have certain behaviors and mindsets and morals that we all believe it is correct. This is you respect your parents, you don't kill another human, you don't steal, you don't covet, you don't you show good manners, you help others, you stand up for justice. All these things that humanity naturally cares about, right? And the most important thing of them is that a human being is created in such a way where they know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know their creator. They have this natural instinct to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to seek a purpose, to seek meaning in something bigger than them. And I'm sure we could see, we all know people that may not have faith. They might not have been satisfied with let's say Christianity, Judaism, or even Islam, if it wasn't taught to them properly, and they tell you I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not, I don't follow a religion, because the religion didn't make sense to them, but they still did not want to leave the spiritual aspects of it, that it gives you purpose, that it gives you connection to a higher being. And for us Muslims, I say that when we have Muslims that reach that state, is that how are they educated about Islam? Let's look back at that. What is the understanding they have of Islam? Obviously, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, somebody is arrogant and does not want to accept it, that's one thing. But a lot of times people are they didn't get the proper Islamic information or knowledge or explanation, right? So yeah, that ayah is also speaking about the fitrah. This gives us the knowledge of Allah, His oneness, the right to be worshipped. Yep, we talked about that. Oh yes, okay, so the Prophet ﷺ tells us that every كل مولود يولد على الفطرة فأبواه يهودانه أو يمجسانه أو ينصرانه. So basically every child is born upon the fitrah. If you were to leave that child to grow up on their own, they would grow up knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what happens is that his parents change them to become either Jews, Christians, or fire worshippers. And if you look at that, showing you how there is that nature Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, but then there is that nurture in the environment that we had been, and how it shaped us and it made us who we are. And if that environment, whether it is faith or whatever, if that environment that was taking care of you did not protect the fitrah Allah gave, put in you, then that's where That's where the deviation is coming from, okay? That's where deviation comes from. So what is an example? Well, I guess religion is a big example. But let's say for, I don't know what example. An example is coming to my mind is if a child is brought up eating the foods that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in nature. Part of that would be fruits and vegetables, and but then today we see an aversion from in a lot of children from vegetables, and we don't want to touch it, we don't want to eat it, like, oh my God. But what replaced it is a lot of processed foods, a lot of foods that have had like artificial sugars and artificial flavors, where their tongue and their taste buds have become used to it. So now they find the natural fruits and vegetables of Allah to not be like it doesn't taste good for them. Okay. I know this from a course that I was teaching in a childcare setting, that you expose children to all these fruits and vegetables. You let them be part of the gardening process so that they can appreciate it. But then if we're not doing those things, and this is what humanity used to do a long time ago, and this is some of the changes that we see in our modern times, is that when we're disconnected, it brings up a lot of consequences. Okay, so that's basically how how changes happen in the fitrah. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, like, He's created us a spiritual being, like He created us the ruh, our spiritual, the part of our existence that seeks Allah. That's your spiritual self, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He created Adam alayhi salam, He created him physical being, right? He took sand or mud from all over the earth, put it together, fashioned Adam alayhi salam with His own hands, and then Adam alayhi salam was like clay standing, completely formed for a long time, and Iblis used to go inside of him and come outside of him, and he would talk to him. But basically, how did the ruh get into Adam alayhi salam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed into him the soul, right? So anything that satisfies that soul has to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the soul itself came from Allah. قُلُ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. The ruh is from the affairs of Allah. We don't know enough about it. We cannot explain it, but then we know it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And anything that satisfies it is anything that connects it back to Allah. What are these things? Now, think about your own self. When is a time that you are, and I want you guys to share this with me, when is a time that you feel spiritually centered? What actions are you doing? When, like, what, like we call it like what tells you have an iman. Like, so the question is, what are some signs you witnessed in yourself that signal to you that you are in need of an iman revival? And what are your to-go worship practices? Why? Because of the way they make you feel. Okay, so I want you to think about that, and I hope we can have a little bit of discussion about it. But basically, what nourishes your soul and your heart and that makes you feel peace and centered, and you can't like pinpoint it. You can't say I feel it here. Like that's how you know it's a spiritual thing. It's anything that connects you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gives you knowledge of Allah and certainty that He is your Rabb, He is your caretaker, He is the one that will protect you regardless of what's happening around you, right? The more we have that feeling, the more spiritual like we are. The more we find sweetness in it, the more we will grow the spiritual side of our life. And then khushu' in salah and in all your worship. So we all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we seek nearness to Allah by doing certain practices, right? We stand up for salah, we go into sujood, we fast Ramadan, we pay sadaqah. So these are external actions, right? But if these external actions are devoid of the khushu', if they're devoid of where your heart is connected and feeling the purpose why you're doing it, and doing it as a result of complete consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these become physical actions. that are devoid of khushu', right? They're devoid of connecting it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if they're devoid of that, then they're not giving you that spiritual peace that we're all looking for, right? This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, the believers are successful, those who have khushu' in their salah. Okay. Another thing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنْظُرُ إِلَىٰ أَجْسَامِكُمْ like, I wish I wrote down the hadith. Allah does not look at our physical bodies and the physical external actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at the states of our hearts, meaning your intentions, meaning like, are you conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are you intending Him? Are you doing this to please Him? That is the heart of the worship. And if the heart of the worship is not being fulfilled, then we're not at a place where our ibadah, the external ibadah, is fulfilling our soul, okay, fulfilling our spiritual existence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and this is a very scary ayah, and this is why like we really need to pay attention to the idea of khushu'. So many of us complain about we all experience it, like my iman is low, I'm feeling numb, I'm not like, I'm not present when I'm praying, I'm not present I'm not feeling my salah, or my salah has just become movements, like we're missing this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. I'm just going to open my Quran. It's in Surat al-Hadid. Let me just open it. أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Isn't it time for those who believe, for their hearts to become present, calm, peaceful, tranquil when Allah is mentioned, right? If and that which has been revealed from Allah, and that they don't be like those who have been given the books before them. As time passed, their hearts became hard. Okay, as time passed, their hearts became hard. You know what I was thinking? And this, wallahi, like as Muslims and Christians and Jews and you name it, we can fall into this, right? I think I told you guys that the day I was in labor, I was watching a documentary that was basically talking about the murder of a nun, and how like they could never find out who killed this nun. But basically, it's on Netflix. It's called The Keepers. It's pretty interesting. Check it out if you're, but I don't want to like be mindful. It has some traumatic stuff. Basically, the priest in the school where she worked was sexually abusing all the girls and raping them and like exploiting them sexually. And when she tried to do something about it, the nun went missing. Her body was found. All this stuff. And I kept on thinking like how like there's an epidemic, obviously. Like, I don't want to call it an epidemic. There's a big problem with Catholic priests and the whole thing of like sexual abuse towards children and boys and girls and you name it, right? And I was thinking like, how is someone who is representing Allah, it doesn't matter whether you are doing it, like you're here, like you're supposed to be a spiritual person. How did you get to the point where you are doing the worst crimes that you're supposed to guide others not to do, right? And our like Muslim imams or Muslim scholars are not free of mistakes, and we just might not hear about it, but they're also human beings that get to this level where a person who is at the level of guiding and nurturing the spirituality of others are falling into the worst of sins. How does that happen? And that happens, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when our worship becomes physical practice that is devoid of the emotion. And how do you nurture that? That has to be a process that something that you invest a lot of time in. You invest, like you sit alone, you reflect, you assess yourself, you have conversations with yourself, you have accountability with yourself. If you're not doing that, then your actions become just physical, and your heart becomes hard. And when the heart becomes hard, then the sins become easy, like it's nothing. Does that make sense? So that's the ayah in Surat Al-Hadid where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you don't have the khushu', your hearts will become hard, and then fisq will happen, excessive sinning will happen, right? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach us and guide us and support us in always doing the things that soften our hearts, okay? So some of the things that our deen emphasizes is altruism, like giving to others, supporting others, and that is a major component of our ibadah. That there is a ibadah between us and Allah, which is your salah, your fasting, and your recitation of the Quran. These build you up spiritually and connect you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But also there is ibadah in you taking care of others, you giving charity, you visiting the sick, you going to a janazah, you like all these things. There's benefit, like they connect you to the social world, right? But what it does is that it gives you a sense of, I'm doing something, like I'm giving back, and that gives us purpose and meaning, okay? That purpose and meaning is our spiritual life, right? And we're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's like multiple layers of how we are benefiting. So whenever we're in a state where we're feeling low in our iman, we are told and we are taught, go back, like look at your ibadah, what are you doing? Increase it, right? And don't expect it to automatically give us khushu'. It takes time. It takes time for khushu' to come, right? It takes time for us to reach a level where we're enjoying and finding sweetness in something. That sometimes you might read Quran forcing yourself. You might read Quran and go pages and feel like there's a heavy burden, like you just want to get up and you don't want to continue. But that's when we are supposed to sit and force ourselves and stick with it, and eventually the sweetness will come, right? So reflections over what and how, like reflecting over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, and how do we do it? And reflecting over ourselves, reflecting over our actions, everything that reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we do reflections? We can sit alone, we can sit in a group, we can have a conversation with somebody, we can read a book, we can do so many different things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is constantly telling us, reflect, reflect, reflect. أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ أَفَلَا تَدَبَّرُونَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. All of that is asking us to engage our mind, engage our hearts. And when we do that, we find the spiritual sweetness, okay? When things connect for us, we find the spiritual sweetness. Sometimes it feels like goosebumps on your body. Sometimes it feels like a teardrop. And this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, like, not Allah, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم, their hearts tremble. تَقْشَعِرُّ مِنْهُ جُلُودُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Like, so when the verses of Allah, I don't know what is happening to me, you guys, like, Ya Allah, inshallah khair. But basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like, when the dhikr happens, this is Surat Zumar, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, like, when people are immersed in dhikr, what happens is that they're, like, the hair on their body raises because of what they're reciting. Right? تَقْشَعِرُّ مِنْهُ جُلُودُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ تَلِينُ قُلُوبُهُم. Then their hearts become softer. So if we're trying to run away from our hearts becoming hard, then the dhikr of Allah, the Quran, the circles of knowledge, the circles of goodness, the masjid, Salatul Jum'ah, going, like, giving charity, not just like hitting an account and saying, here's a charity, like, that's good. There's great value in that. But seeking out the needy and the poor in your community and supporting them with your own hands, and you seeing how it's impacting somebody, those are the things that we're looking for. Those are the things that will touch our hearts. Creating peaceful relationships in our homes. And specifically, Allah says in the Quran about marriage is that وَجَعَلَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Like, He had given you spouses so that you may feel tranquil. And this sukoon comes at a level of spirituality, like you're feeling content, you're feeling peaceful, you're feeling like if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you that peace in the home. And if it's not there, that's a test, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us with it. But basically also nurturing friendships and relationships, and like parenting with love, and seeking to purify our hearts and cleansing our hearts from the impurities that we will kind of go into with when we talk about emotional well-being. So that, right? So what are the consequences of being heedless and not nurturing our spirituality? I think the scariest ayah, like the most beautiful ayah, is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He says, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُم بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Those who have iman and their hearts and like their spiritual selves find peace in the remembrance of Allah. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Indeed, with the remembrance of Allah do the hearts find peace and tranquility, right? There's another ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي. Anyone who turns away from my remembrance, who turns away from going back to the source of your spirituality. So you fulfill it with, let's say, things that are not like really satisfying, like not the things that we talked about. If you do that, فَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. Then that person will have a difficult, constricted, tight life. فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. And on the day of judgment, this person will come blind. And then they will say, رَبِّ لِمَ حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا. Oh Allah, like why did you bring me blind when I used to be of seeing, like I had sight? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells this person, كَذَلِكَ أَتَتْكَ آيَاتُنَا فَنَسِيتَهَا. Just like that, our verses came to you, so you forgot about them. Today we will forget about you. We will not like take care of you because you've neglected us before, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who have proper dhikr of Allah, proper remembrance of Allah in their hearts in a way that is really satisfying for us, makes Allah pleased with us and allows Allah to accept it from us, and may we grow in it, because Iman, what we're talking about, Iman, it goes up and down, right? But then there comes a time like it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. But then it's also like it's going up and down in a way where it's heading up, right? I wish I had the ability to draw on this. Annotate, draw. Where do I draw them? Can you guys see me drawing anything? Oh, you guys see my screen, right? Let me show you guys something. What? Wait. Clear all drawings. I want to show you guys something. No. Just give me my mouse, okay? So, like if we were to say Iman goes up and down, so then you have going up, going down, going up, going down, going up, going down, going up, going down, right? But then that means you're always coming back. If this is the base, right? That means you're always coming back to that base, right? But then the way what we are shooting for is that Iman goes, like let's say this is our base where we started. It goes up, it comes down. 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 But it never goes back. Like it might go like that, it's okay. But then it never goes like it's increasing. You see how it's like, it's increasing, right? And what does that? The more knowledge we seek, the more the more knowledge we seek, the more we connect ourselves with, like we build habits of ibadah. Like my salah is consistent. My salah is growing. Like I'm adding sunan. I'm taking care of my sunan. I am doing tahajjud. I am doing this. So a person who has become accustomed to praying, oops, a person who has accustomed to a level of ibadah where they pray qiyam, they pray sunan, they're never going to miss Fajr, Dhuhr, and Asr one day. Okay? So they have built their iman to a level where they never go back. Like, it's not like they're here one day praying tahajjud, they're not gonna come down and not miss salah. Right? So what is this base? What is this base that we're talking about? These are the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made mandatory. They're like the bare minimum. The bare minimum is that I am praying 5 times a day. I am praying fasting Ramadan. I am making up what I missed of Ramadan. I am paying my zakah. I am paying, the bare minimum. Okay? So those things are the bare minimum. If we do that, alhamdulillah. And if we go below it, then we are in a place where we are under the threat of punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah protect us. I hope this makes sense. But basically, let me go back to the mouse. I've never done this, man. MashaAllah. And I'm not gonna close this just in case anybody has a question about it. Let me go back to, oops. Well, I don't know why it's on the screen. I thought I was doing it on the Word document. But anyways, so what I was gonna say is asking ourselves like what are some of the signs that we see in ourselves that signal to us our iman needs a revival. It is going down. I'm struggling. And how do we usually know we are committing sins or we are not immersed in ibadah like we used to be? Right? We are not praying sunnah. We are not reading Quran. We're not doing our dhikr. We're not, we're heedless of Allah. Like, I hear, like, I'm not listening to lectures. If I hear a lecture, I'm not very engaged in it. Like, so you see these things. What are some of the things that tells you, like, I need a revival? Like, I'm going down and I need a revival. And also, what are some of the practices that you automatically go to? And this is really an important question. Who do you reach out to when you need an iman boost? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create us to be alone, right? And it's really important for us as Muslims to recognize the importance of a community, the importance of guides and teachers and mentors and friends who remind us, who tell you, like, hey, just like we were talking about when we were doing Surat Zalzala, like, you guys, like, you don't understand how in desperate need I felt in the past couple of weeks for somebody to just call me and say, like, oh, you're not praying, but did you do your dhikr? Did you do your Quran? Did you recite? Did you listen to something beneficial? Because you feel like when you're not praying as women, we can go down, and when we're not seeing adults, we're not seeing our friends, we're not going up to the masjid, we're not going to Jummah, we're not getting a revival, we see ourselves going down. So guess what? Reminders come to us by way of those people. Who are the people that I'm closest to that bring me that? These are really important questions to think about when it comes to our ibadah life, our spiritual life. Right? إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, indeed the believers are those when Allah is mentioned, their hearts feel like that. Right? وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. When the verses of Allah are recited, their iman increases. Right? So وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ, and then they become more trusting and more reliant on their Rabb. Okay? So these, it's all connected. Your iman is, when the dhikr of Allah happens, there's physical feelings, right? And the verses that are recited, it increases your iman. When your iman increases, behavior increases. And which behavior here? Tawakkul, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to come to you guys before we get into the physical. And see, you annotated on your notes, and I'm sure there is a way to get rid of it. Huh. Did you, okay, so when I look at the notes now, it's gone. Right? Okay. Alhamdulillah, these are not notes you're looking at. Whatever I drew is now gone. But let me know, you guys have any thoughts, any questions, and like maybe let me know the answer to this question. What are some of these questions? Like, when do you notice your iman is going down, and what do you do? Who do you go to? What do you seek out? You know? For me personally, it's always read Quran, listen to a lecture, or go to the masjid, go to Jum'ah, specifically Jum'ah, specifically Salat al-Jum'ah and Khutbat al-Jum'ah, and walking there and saying, Ya Allah, like, this is how I'm feeling, give me what I need. And it doesn't always happen automatically, but you really give it time. Like, you give it time, and you go back to persistency. And talking to friends who talk to me about like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that takes effort, you know, like it's like calling somebody and knowing who you're calling and knowing what it is that you're seeking from them, and just engaging in a conversation that you know will bring the reminders of Allah to your heart. Alhamdulillah. Good, Rabia. Good. I have a question for you, so you answer my questions now. Thank you, Rabia. He said, for me, it is being in the company of those who are better than me in Iman, listening to lectures, tafseer, and memorization. Beautiful, beautiful. So let's all also like be mindful of where our Iman is, how much of our days are we spending in reminders that connect us to Allah, or in practices that connect us to Allah, and how much more do we want? Carrie said, Assalamu alaikum, Carrie. I try to listen to lectures and read and do some volunteer work, help others. Very beneficial. Rabia said, very beneficial. I tend to overcommit when I'm feeling low in Iman, but then continue doing at least one or two things. Yes. How do we find the balance? How do we find the balance between overcommitting and, you know, something I was thinking about the other day? I was talking to one of my students that came to visit me, and she said how, like, she really was struggling with feeling like her work, like she's not really reaping the benefits of her worship, like that she's memorizing, she's praying, she is reading Quran, but like she said, I don't feel anything, like I'm just completely gone, right? And she's not typically like that, right? So we're talking about like what is making her feel that way, and it was basically work was very stressful. Coming home was very stressful. The responsibilities were very heavy. The load, like her mental load, was a lot. So when you're busy with responsibilities and your day starts at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and until 11:30 at night, you're going, mentally, emotionally, physically, it really doesn't leave a lot of time for your spiritual life to nurture, right? Now, there are times in our lives where we have to do that for our greater good, like for a greater benefit, right? But if this is the way we live all the time, then there's a problem, because that means we're going a long time without being able to feel spiritual, right? Like, you know how like right before Ramadan, we all feel so exhausted, like spiritually so exhausted, so in need of Ramadan. And Ramadan comes and alhamdulillah, it calms us down. But then our lives are so busy, so hectic, that even when Ramadan comes, we're not getting what we want. And if this is like one Ramadan passed me like this, or the majority of Ramadan passed me like this, because I'm now finishing up my degree, or I'm taking my license exam, or I'm submitting like a major project at work, this is something temporary, right? It's okay. And as human beings, we have that capacity, and Allah is merciful. But if this is how we live all the time, then it's a very stressful life, and it eventually has spiritual consequences, it has physical consequences, it has relationship consequences. Like we're supposed to. And then, you know what's so interesting? Like now that I'm saying that, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived like that, right? But in the next surah, Surat al-Duha, and Surah Alam Nashrah Laka Sadrak, we're going to talk about how Allah guided him to balance it out. Oh my God, this is so beautiful. Okay, let me get back to this. Carrie said, helping others and volunteering. This is amazing because like what we're talking about earlier, like giving to others really helps you recognize what you need to be grateful for, you know, what you need to be grateful for. For me, reading Quran and listening to lectures are wonderful. For me, personally too, like I think I said earlier, reading Quran, I benefit more from listening to the Quran than reading it, like spiritually. Like if I'm feeling weak, and I specifically love Ajami, and I will listen to Surah Al-An'am in Ajami. I would listen to like Surah Al-Baqarah with Ghamidi. I would listen to like Surah Al-Isra wal-Kahf and Maryam and Taha with Ajami. Like those, just listening to them and turning them on while I do work in the house, it's a different cartoon comes out. So thank you for making me think about what I need. Zulaykha said, when I feel like my iman is low, I try to make istighfar, either by praying 2 rak'ahs tawbah or making istighfar through dua. I'm like tearing up with this, subhanAllah. Because sometimes we aren't aware of our sins or how it's impacting us. The way istighfar always brings me back and opens the heart to what you need is powerful. So true. The way istighfar always brings me back and opens the heart to what you need is powerful. Zulaykha, I'm going to copy that. Thank you so much. So much. To all of you guys. What do I need to do? I'm trying to go. Friday prayers. Fatima, assalamu alaikum. Friday prayers are always renewing for me. Wonderful. 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 Alhamdulillah. So if any of us is feeling low this week, let's take one of these things. Maybe something you do, or maybe something somebody else shared. Try something new, because in diversifying our ibadas, we get different feelings, right? If we're always doing like one thing, try something new, because then you're going to get a different feeling. So it's really good to do that, because you know our scholars say like the heart or the human being like gets tired, we get bored, you know. So trying something new as well. All right, let's continue. Let me just share the screen with you guys. And I go back here and I move this guy here. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So in the physical creation of the human being, and so we already talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us like different, like physically different than the other, like the jinn and the animals, right? Here, what I wanted us to think about specifically is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like our body is the way we experience this world, right? It's the most present thing, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us guidance to take care of it, to take care of its cleanliness, purification, strength, like by way of what we eat and what we drink and how we eat and how we drink, like consciousness, like mental clarity, because that, like what you eat, what you drink impacts that. Beauty, like, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all of us beautiful, you know. But how do we take care of that beauty? How do we like nurture all of that, right? So there's this hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, remember we talked about the creation is the fitra, right? So when a human being comes out of their moms, actually that's in my next slide. Okay, I'll get to it. But basically, if you as an adult, as a grown-up person, or what we teach our children when they're growing up is, or what we make sure like we leave them with, is how to take care of their body in a way like in these things that the Prophet ﷺ tells us is part of the fitrah. What are they? Trimming the mustache. So men, if they have a mustache, that it doesn't go too long. That you trim it, that the beard you let it go, the more the beard, the more the more handsome. Personal preference, I guess, or wallahu alam. But basically to leave the beard, to not like get rid of all of it, using the miswak, meaning brushing your teeth. But specifically, I remember asking Sheikh Walid, is the benefit, or is like, if I brush my teeth, is that fulfilling the sunnah? And the Prophet Sheikh Walid said, the Prophet ﷺ said that the miswak, specifically the siwak, is pleasing to Allah, right? So we can brush our teeth with the modern day brushes that we have, but the siwak is a tool that is actually pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it has many other health benefits that we're learning about today too. One of my friends told me that when her teeth are like perfectly white and straight, she said, because our mom used to tell us to brush our teeth with the siwak every morning, like we call it adi somali, and it's the way she used to teach them. It's like to make sure that you do it and it straightens out your teeth. Something I need to start doing for me and my son, Snuffing up water, like when you're making wudu, we take the water and we breathe it in and we blow it out. So that's another thing that is from the fitrah. Paring the nails, like cutting up the nails, making sure your nails are clean. Like we don't leave our nails to grow, even though today that's a style, that's fashion. But our nails are supposed to be trimmed and they're supposed to be clean from, like, Islamically. Washing the base of the fingers, like right here. When we're making wudu, we are supposed to do, what do you call it? Tafarruq? No, I'm not sure about the word. But anyways, we're supposed to like wash between our fingers, and we're supposed to also do that with our feet. It is the sunnah of making wudu. Plucking the underarm hair, removing of the pubic hair, removing impurities with water from, like, when you use the bathroom, like using water to clean ourselves. And then the last one is to put water in your mouth and gargle, right? Tamadmud. That's another thing that we do during the wudu. And how many times do we do this? At least like 5 times if you have your wudu, like maybe 3-4 times. Allah Ta'ala alam. But like we do this quite a bit, quite a bit. Like I want to share something with you guys that isn't really maybe coming up, but it's about the wudu, how early in the morning when we wake up, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that we're so tired, we're so exhausted, but you go and you make wudu, right? And you use water that is like maybe cold or, warm, Allah Ta'ala a'lam, but that water, like, it refreshes you and you're able to pray. And, with one hadith, the shaitan, like, how like when we sleep, shaitan has 3 knots on us. One of the knots is removed when you make the wudu, right? So Tony Robbins, he's like one of those great motivational speakers in psychology, modern day psychology, and he basically talked about how when he wakes up in the morning, to get himself in the best energy, in the best, like, to reap the best from his not the best, but basically to get himself physically and mentally ready, he shocks his body by taking a freezing shower. He jumps into this super cold water pool that he has. So I remember when I wanted to pray in Qiyam, it was so hard. Like, I loved my sleep. I loved it. I loved nothing more than my sleep. I would go and take a cold shower at 4 a.m. And I usually take shower with like hot water. But I would do the cold just so that, and you would feel like, you would shake from the inside. And there's no way you're going to go back to sleep after that. So try it out. Check it out. Okay. So from the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings a human into this world, a child into this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared it to get the best nutrition in terms of, like, what do they need to be taken care of. The best nutrition that anybody could give a child is breastfeeding. And in the Quran, Allah speaks about it in 2 ways. Like, He says, one, like, He's talking about the difficulties that a mother endures to take care of a child. And he says, وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ, to breastfeed him for 2 years. Like, this is some of the things that women endure in the path of parenting that is more difficult than what the fathers endure, okay? And if you ever speak to a breastfeeding mom, she'll tell you, like, I'm sleepless, I don't sleep, you know, and subhanAllah, like, in our modern day world, what we add to that is breastfeeding moms who are working, who are going like out of the home, and, you know, who are sleep deprived and also going out. It's difficult. The other place that Allah mentions it, which is really interesting, when a man and a woman divorce, and the woman is they have a child, that child has the right to be breastfed. And so Allah tells the man to pay the woman, the mother of the child, to breastfeed him, so that she is not worried about income, right? That she is breastfeeding her child. And then Allah says, if, you know, like, the woman wants more money than what this man is able to afford, then he says, go and hire somebody to breastfeed for you, showing you the importance and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as soon as we are coming into this world, he wants us to get the best nutrition possible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us in the Quran to eat that which is halal and good. Right? What is halal and what is good? Halal is everything, like, Allah teaches us what is halal. Like, he tells us in so many places in the Quran, like, we don't eat dead meat, we don't eat what has been killed for the sake of other than Allah, we don't eat pig meat, we don't eat pork, we don't eat there's a list of things, right? So the halal is clear, and most of us know. If we're going to eat meat, we say Bismillah on it, and the fish is free, all the stuff that is halal. But what is good? What is good? Good now has, and like in our modern day, we have to understand it to be like that most wholesome food, the most organic food, the food in the way Allah created it. Why? Because we are living times where artificial foods and non-organic stuff, or things that have been like toxins have been added to the foods, is what we are, the majority of what is being consumed, right? And eating organic is connected to expensive, right? But there's a reason why the other foods have been made cheap. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran talks about when mankind start to corrupt the earth, they corrupt the vegetation that is coming out of the earth. Right? So we know this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, do not follow the footsteps of shaitan, because what we eat really like makes us, like, when we're studying tazkiyah, we are told to like that's one of the ways that shaitan gets to us, that we become weak for our nafs, is that we're not mindful of how we're eating and what we're eating. Okay, so that's one thing. And then another thing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making haram anything that intoxicates our minds, where we're not in the best mental state, right? So alcohol is haram, drugs are haram, but then also thinking of a lot of modern day science shows us that the overconsumption of sugary stuff leads to changes in our emotions and leads to mental fogginess, right? Where a person feels heavy and they're mentally not clear. And when you eliminate certain foods, you get mental clarity. That's how some fad diets are actually like, advertised, right? But if a Muslim goes back to the basic of, if you eat halal and you eat what is good, that Allah had created, that is most a wholesome food, that is organic, that is free of toxins and artificial stuff, then you are protecting your body and what your body is getting. And if you are staying away from what intoxicates you, you're also protecting your body and your mind. And you're also protecting the society, right? Because we know that intoxications and alcohol and drugs is not something that only impacts us if we consume it, and if we, it also impacts our communities and our societies. I took a course. I took a course in drug and alcohol abuse counseling drugs, like basically in recovery. And I remember, like, wallahi, I've never felt so grateful for the idea, like the fact that Allah just made it haram completely. Because so many times people would say, like, people think I can just consume a little bit and be responsible. But no, some communities that are like being some human beings, their body, when they drink, they cannot tolerate it. That their level of intoxication leads them to become addicted. And when they're addicted, they lose it all. Like, they cannot live a normal life. Right? They're not able to live a normal life where the whole family is destroyed, the community is destroyed, and you're like, this is not what Allah intended for us, you know. And that's why all of it is haram. Even a little bit of it is not okay for us to take, because you don't know if your body will get addicted or not. And then when you see all the harms that it brings, you're like, alhamdulillah that Allah made it haram. Same thing with the drugs. How to eat and how to dress. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah in the Quran, He tells us, all children of Adam, dress properly at every place of worship. Like, look good in the way you dress. Make sure you're wearing clean clothes. You make sure you're pleasing to the eye when others see you. And eat and drink, but do not do it excessively, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love those who go excessively. So today, modern day science also shows us that we have all these health disparities that go back to the reality of the way we eat and how we have been eating and the overconsumption of food. And that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created fruits, they're naturally sweetened, but they don't lead to epidemic numbers of obesity. But then the artificial sugaring leads to that, where your body is it was not created to handle this, and so it reacts in ways that it is not designed to react, right? And obviously, like, we none of us is exempt. We've all had, like, I remember as a kid, chocolate was like my number one to go to. I don't remember eating anything else, right? And what is in that chocolate? There could be good cocoa, but what was the ingredients in those foods? And so how did we alter our bodies? What toxins did we bring into our bodies? And how is it impacting our health and longevity, like long term, and our strength if we're still consuming it? The Prophet ﷺ tells us that there isn't a container worse for the son of Adam to fill except more than his tummy, and that if one should eat, they should the most you should eat is 1/3 food, 1/3 water, 1/3 for air. Right? Showing you, like, we don't overeat to the point of, like, we're exploding, right? But is this the way we are? Is this the way we consume food? No, it's advertised to us everywhere. The flavors and things are added to it that make us forget about mindfulness, and this invites shaitan more to our, like, basically shaitan is the more we do this, the more we harm our body and not have an impact on our ability to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You're too exhausted, you're too tired, you're too weak, you're too, all these things happen. Then the sunnah of sleeping. So I'm going to give you guys homework that it's not, you don't have to submit it, but please find this lecture by Sheikh Muhammad al-Sharif. It's called The Sleeping Habits of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Basically, he talks about how the Prophet ﷺ taught us to sleep, like doing dhikr before you sleep, making wudu before you sleep, sleeping on the right side, doing what time he actually went to sleep, what time of the day did he go to sleep, what time did he wake up, and like, did he take a nap during the day or not. The reason why sleep is so important, that book that I was telling you guys about, The Upward Spiral, that was talking about depression and anxiety, one of the biggest chapters one of the biggest lessons that he was delivering in that book was, if you fix your sleep, you fix 90% of, like, your health, right? Your physical health and your emotional health, if you fix your sleep. And when science teaches us about what they know about sleep, subhanallah, like, you see, this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. You know, the times the Prophet ﷺ taught us to sleep right after Isha, you know, unless you have a very important reason why you're awake. When you're sleeping, do some mindful dhikr, like they tell you do some gratitude, but doing dhikr, thanking Allah, like doing your du'as, reading some Quran, and like waking up in the middle of the night to pray Qiyam al-Layl at a time before like sunrise. Like how is somebody able to do that if they're still tired? No, but if you went to sleep right after Isha, your body would automatically be able to wake up at that time, right? Or your body would automatically be able to wake up for Salatul Fajr. So all those things, right? So listen to that lecture. I highly recommend it. The Sunnah of fasting. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that we fast in Ramadan, obviously, but the Prophet ﷺ also had a habit of fasting every Monday and Thursday. The Prophet ﷺ told us that he told us not to fast every single day, but that the best of fasting is the fasting of Dawood, where he used to fast one day and break one day, fast one day, break it one day. Look up intermittent fasting, you know, and you will see all the health benefits that we're being taught today about fasting, right? And this is something like the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us do intermittent fasting, don't eat from this time to this time. We can do that. There's nothing wrong with like looking at science and doing it, but also reflecting on if I follow the Sunnah, I am taking care of my body. I am taking care of my health, okay? If I follow the Sunnah, I'm taking care of my health overall. Right? If I'm following the Sunnah, if I'm following the guidance of Allah, I am taking care of my health so that I'm able to better worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Human sexuality and how it has social impact. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like eating and drinking is a physical necessity and enjoyment for our body, sexuality is the same way. It's a physical need, and it's a physical, desire that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in us, and He has taught us the ways in which we seek it, right, and enjoy it. And if we don't do that, guess what happens? Not only are we harmed and are impacted, but the society is also impacted. So recognizing that am I seeking this pleasure in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if I'm not, then how is it impacting me? How is it impacting my marriage? How is it impacting my family? You know, I was reading something about when women say something like, you know, they're saying no to their husbands, like they're not accepting, or their husband, you know, approaches her for sex and she refuses. And this one, like Sheikh was talking about, maybe she's saying no to you because you smell bad. She's not finding you attractive to the man, you know, like. We can't just say like, just because she said like, I asked, she has to cooperate, right? And the Prophet ﷺ tells men, don't go into like a sexual relationship with your wife just to release yourself or to relieve yourself and get enjoyment to yourself, but you're not giving the woman enjoyment, but rather engage in some level of foreplay so that she's also having satisfaction in this. Because what happens if you don't do that? She's not going to want it. He's not like, then there's tension, right? And if that continues, then the family is impacted and they may not remain together, or, you know, things like that. And same thing, like if the man is seeking the woman to do certain things and maintain her, like maintain a healthy sexual relationship, but she has issues that are there that need to be taken care of and she's not doing it, then it's, you know what I mean? Like, so being mindful. Yes, it's our body, it's a physical thing, but it's a desire Allah created. And if Allah created the avenues to seek it in halal, and Allah also, like, there are avenues for us to seek it in haram, right? I don't lie about this. I remember a woman saying to me that she was so unhappy in her sexual relationship with her husband that she considered and thinks and gets the thoughts of doing something haram. And like, that's when it's like, subhanallah, like that's when women and men have the right in our Islam, in our deen, to seek divorce if they're not sexually satisfied. right? So, and something that is impacting children, it's something that is impacting the society, right? So being mindful of that. How is the physical state of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Now, we hear like when the older we get, the weaker our bodies become. The older we get, and the more like the more we don't maintain our bodies. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the test of a physical illness, like obviously I'm not speaking about that. Obviously I'm speaking about the things we could do to take care of it, But if we're having a certain illness, then قدر الله ما شاء فعل, right? But then the Prophet ﷺ was able to do tawaf, was able to do like stand up in salah for qiyam until to the point where his feet would be cracked, right? Stand in qiyam, so the qiyam al-layl. And something also I learned recently is that sitting is the new smoking, right? That there is this emphasis in the health industry now to stand up more. And you know how like those Fitbit devices that tell you how many steps you took, the new ones actually tell you how much of your day did you spend standing, and that you're supposed to increase that. So look at like salah and how it's doing that for us. Anyhow, so the Prophet ﷺ was not like, only when he was dying, like when he was sick and he was at the point where he was dying, did he sit in his salah, But the rest of the time, we know that the Prophet ﷺ was strong enough. And also like the companions tell us, when there was a battle, when there was war, the Prophet ﷺ was in there fighting, was in there fighting the enemy. And when, like there was a time in Battle of Khandaq where they were trying to break a rock and they couldn't, so they called the strongest of them, and that was the Prophet ﷺ. So showing you that even though he was over 50, he was 63 years old when he passed away, he was still at that level of strength. So what the question becomes, and this is something I honestly always ask myself, and this is like, truly speaking, like I don't speak about this because I perfected it. It's because this is the struggle of my life, right? I've had health and physical and weight issues since I was maybe like 7 years old, and all of this, like I've gone above and beyond in learning about it to figure out like what do I need to do to help myself, And it's always coming back to, are you going to do that, or are you going to follow the sunnah? Just follow the sunnah. Just follow the sunnah. Follow that ayah, and you'll be good to go. Because subhanallah, and this is the reminder I need right now, right after having a baby, right? But basically, what was the point that I was trying to say? What is it that we're able to do to take care of our physical strength? Right? How do we nourish our body? How do we sleep? What do we drink? How do we drink? How do we eat in such a way that we are nurturing the strength Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us for? Allah created us to be strong. How are we taking care of it? How are we promoting it? What are we doing to take care of it? Or, yeah, that's the question, I guess. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that there are two blessings. All of like the human beings take it for granted: health and time. Well, like being healthy, right? So a lot of times we are motivated to make changes when we become sick. So how do we not do that? How do we not do that? How do we seek to be strong and be healthy for the sake of taking care of the body Allah gave us out of gratitude, and knowing that everything else that it will give us, right? So how can your physical health and wellness improve? Asking ourselves that question. What is one action that I could take that will result in 80% of the changes that you desire? And there's a lot we talked about, but like take time to think about what is it for you, and I'm gonna challenge us and ask us to make that thing something that is in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it's what the Quran had taught us about health and maintaining of our physical bodies and physical health. Modern science is great. Let's make this worship, let's look at modern science as a way to increase our certainty, right? But that we're doing it to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we're content and we're certain that He created us and He knows what is best for us, right? And he's told us what is best for us. All right. So the intellectual part of the human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. I said it earlier, right? Like we've honored the son of Adam. And that honoring, like he talks about the different ways in how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored human beings. And some of our scholars talk about that this is because Allah gave human beings intellect, right? We're able to think, we're able to use our brain. Not even in the way that the jinn, like the jinn, human beings have a mental capacity. They have a physical capacity, right? Physical strength. So the source of the knowledge, the source of this information that we are able to use, and because of it grow and produce and become like change our situations and the situation in the world, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one who gives us the knowledge. We have to affirm that. We have to acknowledge that. And if we don't and know that Allah designed us, and this is what we talked about in Surat Al-Alaq, Allah designed us to seek this knowledge, and he wants to give us this knowledge, and this is worship, right? This is considered worship. But I feel like there's darkness. No, we worship Allah. You're right.
Allah, nobody worship Allah. Allah, nobody Allah no worship.
What are you talking about?
Allah no worship him.
We worship him. He doesn't worship us. You're right.
I didn't say I meant Allah doesn't worship us.
Good.
I didn't meant we don't worship Allah.
I get you. Thank you, Hoya.
I said something wrong.
Yeah, and you fixed it. You did. Okay. So, anyways, what was I trying to say? So basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we seek this knowledge and when we live it, when we implement it, what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we're worshiping him, he's pleased with us. And then think about this, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, why did he create us? He created us to worship him. But he specifically mentions another reason for the creation of human beings, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that those who believe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will use them to be as a khalifa on the earth, like representatives of Allah on the earth. How will you represent Allah on the earth? Allah will give you knowledge to make the earth a place where people are able to live, they're able to procreate, they're able to live in justice, they're able to like look at all the things that we're able to reach with modern science, right? From the beginning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, right? We're able to fly, we're able to get to the moon, we're able to have medicine, we're able to perform surgeries. Now, all this knowledge comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah had gifted it to human beings, and those who had iman, those who did it with knowing that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will accept from them. But those who did not do that, they sought the knowledge, but Allah gave it to them anyways, yet they still did not acknowledge Allah. Does that happen? Yes, it happens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hold back knowledge from humanity because they're not believers. Allah gives it to everybody, right? And he could give it to non-believers. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that he tells us in Surat Fussilat, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ, that we will show them our signs that this deen is the truth, that Allah is the truth. They take it, they don't take it, that's up to them, right? But the knowledge is there, humanity benefits, humanity grows. We are being true representatives of Allah on this earth, okay? With that comes accepting our human limitation. With that comes accepting our human limitation, that we don't know everything. Everything we know, and we don't know everything, and everything we know is not everything to know, right? So that there's always more to seek. There's always more that we don't know. That's why we always say Allah Ta'ala A'lam, that we don't say I have reached a level of expertise that this is the way it is and there is no other way. No, there could be something you don't know, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala can reveal it to you. How many times do we read books of like science and say, or history, and say this is what people believed at that time, and now we say that was incorrect, right? How do we know? Because Allah gave us more knowledge to know, right? But then those people that lived at that time, they probably thought like we were the best of the best, right? And your efforts are great, alhamdulillah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases increases for us based on the effort we put in seeking this knowledge, right? And remember something like Sheikh Yasir Qadi saying, خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم, read and your Rabb is more generous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about secular knowledge, the knowledge of this dunya, right? The knowledge of this dunya can give you the knowledge of the can get you the reward in the akhirah, but it could just be sought for the knowledge of this dunya as well. And that as Muslims and believers, the more we dedicate every aspect of our life to Allah, the more, I guess, we get in the akhirah. So accepting the limitation of the human mind and not competing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His knowledge and His wisdom, right? Saying like, oh, like Islam finds alcohol haram. Well, there's nothing wrong with it if you consume a little bit of it. The one who honestly reflects and ponders, you will see that alcohol is the greatest evil, right? It's a great evil. I don't want to say the greatest evil. There's other evils, but the way it destroys people, the way it destroys communities, the way it destroys human beings from their potential, and it's just heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not test us with loving it, and may Allah remove the love of it from the hearts of people. Nobody loves it, to be honest. It's just it's the addiction that becomes stronger than people. Anyhow, so staying within the boundaries of the Quran and the Sunnah. So understanding that in our deen, we're always confined with Quran and Sunnah. Yes, there is a place for reason and logic, right, within that, right? So for example, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to a group of the Muslims after a battle, don't let any of you pray except that you are with Banu Qurayza, right? Banu Qurayza or Banu Nadir, Banu Qurayza, like a Jewish tribe. Like, I don't want to, like, all of you guys need to rush to get to Banu Qurayza. So as they are going on this trip, the time for Asr came. And they said, some of them said, the Prophet told us, don't pray until you get to Bani Qurayza. The other group said, no, the Prophet ﷺ said that, but he meant hurry up. But it's right now, it's the time for Asr and we have to pray. So later on, when they came back, a group prayed and a group said, no, we're going to listen to what the Prophet said. So one group was literal, they took what the Prophet ﷺ said. The other group said, well, the Prophet ﷺ had an intention and I'm going to go with that intention. Later, when they came to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet told them that they were both correct. How could they be both correct when they both did two different things, right? And that teaches you that if you are using this context of the Sunnah, Quran and the Sunnah, your brain, your intellect might bring you to something different than someone else. And it's okay because the bases or the foundations that you used are the same. Right? Your intention was to listen to the Prophet and obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So knowing that, and knowing that things are not always ruled by logic in our deen. Ali ibn Abi Talib, he told us like, if this deen was an affair of logic, then when we are wiping, when we're wiping our shoes, when we're making wudu, we just wipe over our shoe, right? If we had wudu before we put on the shoes, we wipe over the shoe. He said, logic would tell us to clean the dirty part, which is under the shoe. But we don't do that. What do we do instead? We wipe over the shoe, and this tells us we are following the Prophet ﷺ. There are some things that cannot be explained, and we just do it. And we accept that our intellect is limited, right? And in some areas, we're able to think and we're able to reason, and we do that. If we're correct, Allah will reward us. If our scholars are not correct, then they'll also be rewarded because they were putting the effort to reach something with the proper intentions. There was the incident a few years ago where a group of women opened the masjid because they were frustrated with the way the women were being treated in the masjid, right? In the regular masjid. Is their concern valid? Yes. Are a lot of our masajid maybe not friendly, not a healthy environment for women and for many groups? Yes. What is the way to fix it? Right? Now, the building of a masjid is something that is religious, it's something that is spiritual, it's something that is like we do it with the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to say that I'm building a masjid and I'm calling it a masjid, there has to be rules and guidelines that it follows from the Quran and the Sunnah, right? So that act was, even though the intention was good, was like, if we're frustrated, we want to fix it, but the way we went about it is not correct. So this is what I mean by being mindful to staying within the boundaries of the Quran and the Sunnah. Obviously, the other group, like, having women lead salah, this is like a progressive movement saying like we got to change the message of the Quran and the Sunnah because it's not equal. This is now something that is this is something like where we're trying to use our intellect to say, I know better than Allah and I know better than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And at that becomes, it's not even Islam anymore, right? Not establishing a masjid, we wouldn't call it, it's not Islam. It's not maybe the best way to go about, we can't say it's not, they left Islam because they were frustrated and they did something and they said, well, we want to have our own masjid. But did they follow the Sunnah? Probably not. In the other one, women leading Jum'ah, now this is seeking to change the religion and saying, I know better than Allah and the Messenger. And that becomes, of course, unacceptable. This is when your intellect takes you to asfal as-safilin, right? Lower of the low. And then here, continuing. Okay, so how do you nourish your mind? How do you nourish your intellect? You learn more, you seek more, you grow, you look for opportunities, and you produce, like you use your knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted you by serving, by benefiting, by creating things that will benefit humanity, because what you're representing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, right? There's different avenues of learning. Like it doesn't have to be just reading a book. It could be listening to a book. It doesn't have to be reading or listening to a book. It could be getting mentorship, right? That mentor teaches you things about yourself. It could be just going and living amongst a certain group of people just to observe. And subhanAllah, like you learn by observing. So a lot, like this hadith, I absolutely love it because the Prophet ﷺ tells us that wisdom is the lost property of the believer. Where he finds it, he takes it, right? Thinking of how sometimes we say like we can only take knowledge from here or here and it's not okay to take it from here. Well, how do you determine that? How do you determine that? And that's something like, it's a conversation that requires a deeper discussion. Like how do you know where to take knowledge and where not to take it? But if you see wisdom, it doesn't matter who said it, you take it. If it's aligned with the Quran and the Sunnah, it doesn't matter who said it, you take it, right? And we don't discredit the knowledge. We don't discredit people because we don't agree with them or we don't agree with we might disagree with some things, but we don't disagree with in everything, right? That's important because there are times where I remember there was a rhetoric in some masajid that I used to go to, like there's no benefit in attending that lecture, there's no benefit in going to that class with that sheikh, there's no benefit to going to that masjid. Why? Because they believe this and this and that, and because of it, everything they come with is what? Dismissed. And a'udhu billah, that is not from our deen, right? And knowing that knowledge raises your status. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَرْفَعُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ, that Allah raises you and those who have knowledge levels. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rate, what do people of knowledge, what are they able to do? Whether it is deen or dunya, like what are they able to do? They're able to guide others, they're respected, they're looked up to, they're sought after. People go to them for guidance, right? Whether it is deen or dunya. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, like, with knowledge, your status will be upgraded, okay? What are the priorities when it comes to seeking knowledge? The priorities are your deen first. What is mandatory of your deen first? And then what interests and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you in your heart as a passion becomes next, right? So that you know how to pray, that you know how to read the Quran, that you know how to fast, and you know the things Allah made obligatory upon you, that's a must. The things that better your spiritual life, that's a must. The things that better your livelihood, that is also a must, because Allah wants you to live a dignified life. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instilled in some of us desires and passions and excitement about certain areas, whether it is accounting or reading or writing or teaching or medicine, you name it, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you this interest, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the skill set, Allah gave you the talent, Allah made it easy for you. So what is Allah asking you to do? Excel at it, go further, ihsan, like seek to be the best at it. And this is something my teacher, Sheikh Tawfiq Chowdhury, said. He said, like, I took a course with him a long time ago about setting a vision for your life. And he kept on emphasizing, whatever you want, Allah, the Prophet ﷺ says, Inna Allah, Allah loves it when a person does something that he gets good at it, right? So what do you derive from that? Becoming the best and the most sought after expert in that field. What does it take to do that? It takes you putting time and effort, right? It takes you putting time and effort, making dua, asking Allah to open doors for you, to open opportunities for you, to give you the best of that knowledge and give you wisdom in how to implement it and how to share it with others and how to impact others with it and what benefit does it bring to others, right? Thinking about all of that. And then being conscious of self-limiting beliefs, and like being like somebody who's of growth mindset, not fixed mindset. How is that? Like, how do we see that? In the conversations we have with ourselves, we tell ourselves sometimes, I'm not good at this, or I'm not going to succeed at this, or I'm not, like, I can't memorize, I don't have this capacity. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the desire for something, then He gave you the tools and the ability to do it, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that ihras ala ma yanfa'uk, like be keen, be mindful, like hang tight to that which benefits you. Wasta'in billah, and seek the help of Allah. Wala ta'jaz, and do not lose your resolve. Do not lose your patience in the way of getting it. Do not become somebody who gives up easily. Why? Because this is human nature. Human nature. We plan, we think, we dream, we imagine, we do all of this, and then when it's time for implementing, we think, oh, I'm not worthy, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, I can't do that. We get scared, and that's why we seek the help of Allah. Like, Allah did not create us to rely on ourselves. He created us to rely on Him. So whatever we need, we could get it done if we rely on Him. Okay, and so the last part is the emotional being of emotional existence of a person. And so when we were speaking about spirituality, we talked about the qalb, the heart, right? And the heart, I guess, is where you feel emotions. That's where you feel the emotions. Emotions, now this is the interesting thing, right? We all feel them, but we might not have been taught about them when we were little. We would not have been maybe taught the best way to express our emotions, to verbalize them, to communicate our needs based on what it is that we're feeling. We haven't maybe been taught that, but it's a part of us, and Allah addresses it in the Quran, and He verbalizes it, and He reassures the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and He tells us about like common human behaviors. And in the Sunnah, like we're taught about certain like emotions are like they're talked about everywhere, right? So when a lot of times, like today, when we talk about mental health or emotional well-being, they're connected. I'm not talking about like psychosis. I'm talking about just the well-being, the emotional well-being. It's addressed in the Quran. It is addressed in the Sunnah. But we maybe didn't give it that, we didn't look at it in that way, okay? So for example, we already said there was a time how our deen protects breastfeeding for a child, okay? A woman committed zina. She got pregnant. She came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she said, I want the had, like I committed zina and I want to go through the punishment. She confessed, right? So because of her confession, the had becomes like wajib, and she was married before, so like it would be to kill her, to take her life away, to stone her until she dies. So the Prophet ﷺ looked away. Perhaps this woman would like just leave and not come back. Because at this point, the Prophet ﷺ has to implement the law, right? If he doesn't go and look for her, he has to implement it. So he looked at her and he said, go and wait until you get your period. He never went to find her. She came back and she said, I didn't get a period, I'm pregnant. So he told her, go and deliver your baby and then come back. 9 months later, she comes back, she delivered the baby. The Prophet ﷺ tells her, go and breastfeed the baby, wean him off, you know? She goes, she breastfeeds him, she weans him. When she's done with that, she comes back. At this point, she has to go. Like she keeps coming back after all this time. She's truly seeking the Islamic had, you know, like the qisas. And she, I don't know if you call it qisas, but anyways, she's seeking that. So she is stoned until she dies. And the Prophet ﷺ says, you know, like a part of some spots of her blood reached Khalid ibn Walid, and then he was like disgusted, or he was angry. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Wallahi, this woman, she had repented such a repentance. If it was distributed to all of the people of Medina, it would have been sufficient for them. Meaning, like, do not belittle her for her behavior. She made a mistake, she repented, and Allah accepted it. So there is like khalas, like it's done, right? But look at how the Prophet ﷺ was taking care of the needs of the child, whether it was breastfeeding, connecting with their mother, because we know 0 to 2 is the most important emotional block, building of an emotional block of children, right? So there was a study done, like the orphanage, I think they call it the Armenian orphanage, where those children were fed and they were changed, but they did not get love. They did not get hugs. They did not get cuddles. They were not staring and gazing at the eyes of a loving person. When that happens to people, what happens? They grow up to be emotionless. Some of them don't live. Some of them do not, like, they don't thrive. They don't grow. I was listening to this audiobooks recently, like about trauma, and how when it, like, basically it was talking about a mother who was in extreme depression, and how her child was not growing because she wasn't giving the love and the care that the child needed. And that for human beings to survive, we need hugs and kisses and cuddles as a baby, as much or more than you need to be nourished physically. And that even if you're being nourished physically, if you're not getting the love and the hugs, then that could lead to developmental delays, or developmental, like you're not even growing, right? So you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected that for us. And the Prophet ﷺ showed us this example with this woman, right? And we already talked about the breastfeeding and what it does, and how it's not just nourishing, but it's also like emotional. Emotions are valid, and they are there to draw our attention to something. So let me give you guys examples from, let's say we talked about hasad, right? You look at somebody and you like what they have. If you are conscious of the fact that Allah gave it to them and Allah can give it to you, then when you feel that, immediately when you feel the hasad, then you are able to tell yourself, Alhamdulillah, Allah has taken care of me, mashallah for them. Like you're able to, the feeling draws your attention to something, right? So if you're feeling like worried, Allah says in the Quran, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ هَلُوعًا, like mankind or human beings have been created in a state of worry and anxiety and fear. If something good happens, they become miserly, but if something bad happens to them, they lose all of their patience. Except for those who have tranquility in their salah, like khushu', الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ دَائِمُونَ. They are consistent, they are constant, they are peaceful when they are in their salah, right? So showing you that if you have this feeling, it's drawing your attention to you feeling unstable. What should you do? Take that action that will bring you tranquility, that would take away your fear, that would take away your anxiety. If you're feeling hasad, remember, you're feeling this way because you're not thinking about Allah blessing you. So thank Allah and ask Allah to bless you and ask Allah to protect that person. If you're feeling angry, right? Let's say my child came and he dropped, like a cup of milk on the ground, on the floor. And I'm like, oh my God, the carpet. And I get angry, right? Why am I getting angry? Because I did not want I wanted to control things and I did not want the child to drop anything. One is unrealistic because a child will do that, right? And I'm getting angry at somebody that isn't like that. This is the natural behavior for them. So my anger is telling me you're not in control. This is normal behavior. Control, like you can't. The anger is basically always telling us you're not in control, okay? Khotun deals with that, so I know, right? Anger is always telling you you're not in control. You're not you're not in control. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in control. You're not in control of other people. So what does the Prophet ﷺ tell us? He tells us, like if you're standing, sit. If you're sitting, lay down. Go and pray 2 rak'ahs. Go and make wudu. Do something. Change your physical state and your emotional state will change. Change your physical state and your emotional state will change. If you're feeling sadness, if you're feeling grief, if you're feeling like you're feeling sadness and grief, we're going to talk about it in the next 2 surahs, inshallah. What should you do? Show empathy. Go pray. Do tahajjud. Do all these things that connect you. Tasbih to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're feeling greed, like when you want more, you feel it in the heart, right? Like you feel like things are being distributed, or like your boss is not, that's fairness. It's not, like you're feeling greed, right? You want to have more than you are allotted to have. So you feel it in your heart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you what? Say like, وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, if you are protected from the greed of your nafs, then you are the successful one. So you remind yourself, Alhamdulillah for what Allah has given me. Alhamdulillah, like you pay sadaqah to say, I am not so greedy. I'm willing to share from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, right? So emotional awareness tells us about what it is like we need to work on, right? But what happens is that sometimes we numb our emotions. We're not ready to face them. We're not ready to deal with them. They're too difficult for us. Maybe we were not taught as young children, or whatever, but then when the pain increases, the awareness increases, and we're going to have to fight the suppression. And then we're going to have to look for the things that will bring us emotional peace, contentment, happiness. I don't know about happiness. Happiness is, sometimes being patient and being in difficulty is eventual happiness, right? So I take happiness back. So I hope that makes sense. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Quran and the Sunnah have taught us to protect our emotions and take care of them and nurture them. Hope that makes sense. There's a dua here. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, taught us to say, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-mu'afa. Allah, I asked you for well-being in my health, in my wellness, in my physical wellness, my emotional wellness, my spiritual wellness, my intellectual wellness, like that, in dunya and akhirah. Because we don't want to have dunya and neglect the akhirah. right? And then that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the surah, He connects it and He says, those who take care of these things, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ, He makes an exception. Those who have Iman, and with their Iman, they do the righteous deeds, they do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called them to do, فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ, to them is a reward that is not like, will never stop, that is so great. And that reward is in this dunya and in the akhirah. In this dunya, how? Allah subhanahu, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that he was sent to complete the best of manners and to complete upright character and morals. So when we live with that, what happens? Our family is impacted, we are impacted, our relationship with Allah is impacted. Inshallah, Allah is pleased with us. Inshallah, we will get Jannah. But in this dunya, we are happier, we are more content, our families are happier and more content, our societies are happier and more content. So like we're able to influence others, we're able to impact others, we're able to spread this goodness and this khair, right? But if we don't live with it, then that's when we go back to the lowest of the low. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We are done with the surah. Truly love the surah. I truly love the surah, and I hope we can all do this. Like, just take a minute, few minutes, and reflect on it. Ask yourself, like, what lessons stood out to you? What is Allah wanting you to learn? What resonated with you? What actions, what mindsets does Allah want to instill in us? And what are we going to do? And answer the questions that I had in each section. What are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with them? With the emotional stuff, I didn't dig deeper because inshallah next time we'll also address it, because the surahs address them bi'idhnillah. Let me stop sharing. If you have to go, you are free to go. I'd love to hear it from you. MashaAllah. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Do you guys have any thoughts, questions, anything that you want to add so we can all benefit? وإياك يا عائشة. السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم. Yes. Oh my God, Rabia, you are the bomb. You are the bomb. You said to remind you of something. So you know how earlier, I think I was saying when Muna Minkara said what Tini was Zaytun, modern day science, because she's a scientist, right? She said that it does something to your DNA. It repairs your DNA in such a way that it will stop you from aging, right? Stop you from aging. Imagine if a person does not take care of their spiritual self. There is pressure. When we don't take care of our physical health, or we neglect it, or we don't follow the guidance of Allah in all of these things, what happens? Like we are pressuring our physical self, our human, like we're not in a state of wellness, okay? And where we're not in a state of wellness for a very long time, you're prone to more health risks, right? You're prone to a lot more health risks, which takes away from your life. But if you are mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of all these things, then you live longer, even if it is not by age, but by barakah, by potential of what you're able to do. That was the thought that went in my mind. Can I say it again? Okay, let me try to say it again. Muna Minkara said modern day science basically says that in figs and olives together, they have found that consuming them repairs your DNA. It has elements that basically repair your DNA, and they help you with anti-aging. And she mentioned that at Trader Joe's, there are crackers that have fig and olives in them. Okay, so we all need to go get them, right? Because we need to look young and beautiful. But what I was thinking about is how this whole surah is guiding us to the fitrah of taking care of our physical, emotional, spiritual, and emotional, like intellectual wellness, right? And if we do that, then we reap the potential Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for us. And even if we might not live past 50 years old, we're able to have the barakah of our lives, right? So barakah, like you are able to do more based on taking care of the creation, the perfect creation Allah has given you. Does that make sense? Or am I losing somebody? If somebody wants to say it better, it makes sense in my head, you know? When we're not taking care of this creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Then we took him back to the lowest of the low. Meaning, I don't know if you guys are not seeing my screen. Oh my God, that's what, okay. So what is that? It's misguidance, right? Okay, let me share my screen again. So basically, the whole theme of this surah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created human beings in the best way, in the best design. What is this design? It's all of these different things: spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us guidance to take care of all of them. If we do it, we reach our potential. We get the pleasure of Allah, we get Jannah, we live in like, we're able to reach the potential Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for us. If we don't do it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then we have returned him to the lowest of the low. What is that lowest of the low? It's basically misguidance, right? But what is the effects of the misguidance? That's what I meant. That's what I meant by what Muna said made sense, that, you know, it is just a fun fact. It has nothing to do with the tafsir of the surah, but it's just a fun fact. Okay, fun conversation that I had with Mona yesterday. If I lost anybody, don't worry about it. But Carrie, it makes sense to Carrie because me and her were sitting together when Mona was telling us this. So yeah. Alhamdulillah, wonderful. I'm glad. Oh, what is happening with Mom, Aisha? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make whatever is happening easy for her. I'm going to stop the recording.